What were your first thoughts when you saw MTV died or
You know,
the official death?
the funny thing is, like, to me, and for people of our generation or older, the Gen Xers, definitively, MTV was a cultural revolution. It was a time when when that came out, it changed the game of music. It started putting music into a multimedia spectrum, which was never there at the time. Like, prior to that point, you didn't have the ability to see these bands and take music and make it an art piece that wasn't just directly. They had live performances videoed and shown before. Obviously, you look at going back to the Ed Sullivan Show in the 60s with the Beatles and stuff like that. You've had live music playing on broadcasts and people coming out there performing live and having these iconic moments. But to take a song and then turn it into a music video that helps promote the bands, that sometimes because of the video, it elevated and pushed the band into a higher, precipice, if you will, or into the stratosphere with how they did it. It wasn't just the songs on an album; it was also what they can visually do and the visual aesthetics of it turned into the cultural, the pop culture references, fashion styles. I could dress like them, look like them, act like them. It started becoming the benchmark of what was, like, in essence, 80s cool a lot of times. I mean, if you think of the iconic video heroes that, maybe the Michael Jacksons, the Madonnas, Cyndi Lauper, you start looking at Dire Straits, you start looking at these, that it wasn't just their music, but the music videos added to who they were. And it changed the technology of the time. It changed the game. I mean, you started developing technology during music videos that started showing up later on in movies and stuff like that. So it added an element that was unknown at the time and gave young orators, artists, directors, people the ability to create concepts, to tell stories with these music videos. So, like, a lot of times, prior to that point, young kids would buy albums, CDs, read the liner notes, learn the lyrics, and memorize the lyrics. But now the lyrics became an acted out show that people could start, really developing into, digging into. And it's like, wow, that became something bigger than that. And because of that, it gave a lot of artists and bands, especially in genres that weren't really well known, MTV started launching little kind of subcultured shows that became hugely important for music. You look at, if you watched Headbangers Ball, it was every 1980s metal, hard rock music video at the time.
Mhm.
If you watch 120 Minutes, it was every alt rock, psychedelia rock. It's where the Stone Roses or Nirvana or whoever, they got their start on 120 Minutes showing those videos. Of course, an iconic show. Never before in its Yo MTV Raps. I mean, it started getting hip hop artists, rap artists, the ability to get out there and make these music videos too, telling stories and setting a tone, a cultural tone that has defined the essence of cool to this day. It breathed life into people that didn't have a chance. And if you look at how it has progressed, I mean, that's in the early days. If you look at the revolution of it again in like the 2000s with the pop band era, the NSYNCs and the Backstreet, and how $1 million music videos were being made, artists like, Mace and Puffy at the time, doing things like that. They're like, wow, these music videos were high dollar. They were putting, they started launching video vixens, people were getting, star status because of appearing in music videos. Mm-hmm. And then to a band we've mentioned that both of us love, you look at a band like the Gorillaz, who became this new multimedia sensation, who built a legacy and lore, and not only great music off of music videos that they were able to put out there together. It's incredible. It changed. I could not imagine not just music, but a world where MTV globally didn't have such an outreach to inspire artists from Africa to Arkansas to Romania to Japan to China, that they started doing things based on these videos that turned into Japanimation, that turned into the fashion trends of today. And that's why MTV was the essence of cool. And final thought on it, it was also so New York City in the 80s. It was the epitome to me of like New York City fucking cool at the time. So that's MTV is when it went away, like you mentioned and joked about, it's kind of circled the drain for years when they stopped
Yeah.
playing music videos and it became just about reality TV shows, is what it is. But it going away is almost like a portion of New York City lore has closed up in as well too. So
Yeah, and it's interesting to hear you talk about like your experience with MTV and the way that I would talk about MTV and what it meant for me, at least like especially as a young kid growing up, like the show Beavis and Butthead. Like, you know,
MTV
like that
animation.
it was animation, but like that show, like it introduced like a world of like different types of music that like me growing up I wasn't getting anywhere else. Like as a young kid, my mom hated that show, but you look at Beavis and Butthead, like the merchandise that they had, or if you're a millennial, like people would rush home to watch TRL. And
Yeah.
like it made like someone like Carson Daly a huge celebrity. Like to me, like Carson Daly was Seacrest before Seacrest. Like he was the guy. And you mentioned the show MTV Raps. Like that show inspired so many other hip hop related shows where like you can draw the line from Yo MTV Raps to BET's Rap to the Basement. And it's like I could be wrong, but it seems like MTV Raps was the original home for hip hop on television, where you know you had like these other stations, but they were still playing like the soul and the R&B jams and like songs from the 70s, things like that, especially like shows like Soul Train. And then UMTV Raps came along and it was like, hey, like there's actually a place for like real hip hop, not so much like Vanilla Ice, uh, Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch, but there was a place for actual hip hop. And there's other shows on MTV as well. Like I watched UMT Raps, but what resonated with me more for my age, my demographic, was the show with DJ Clue. It was like Das Effects. It was him and Lala Anthony, Carmelo Anthony's wife. Like to me, like that was a huge show on MTV. And I remember like the wars between like TRL and 106 and Park. And if even the show The Real World, like when the reality TV boom first started, like they would still play like some good music on those shows as like the cutaway scenes. Like Coldplay was big, was notorious for being played on The Real World. But for me, you know, with getting into like the dismantling of MTV, you know, they did not have a pivot. Like once like the music videos, like they stopped, like they didn't have a pivot. And like there were so many iconic performances on MTV Unplugged alone, where you had Jay-Z doing the Blueprint album Unplugged, you had Nirvana and that epic show, Lauryn Hill, so on. I think Alice in Chains, I believe
Pearl
they had
Jam, Metallica. Yeah, I mean Metallica. There was so many good MTV Unplugs. Eric Clapton. I mean, there was
yeah.
iconic MTV Unplugged moments. Yeah.
So and I was talking like we were talking about it yesterday, and like what was the pivot like for MTV at that time? And it's like the reality TV money was so good.
Yeah, I
It
mean,
was so good.
I think you look at it at that generation. It's how do you sell like if my speculation. What's up, Max? And Max, by the way, pop-up video was on VH1, MTV's sister channel, like owned by Viacom. So yeah, it's that was a VH1 thing. But I think the pivot was like, I hate saying this, music sort of, we've alluded to this on the show several times before. Music sort of lost its soul a little bit. I believe that, you know, that it didn't, it lost its essence of what it was trying to do. Like when they did have the genre specific artist shows, like record labels, when a band was signed to a record label, the record label was in charge and really was like, the benefit of going to label was like, we're going to promote you guys. And that promotion is going to help you get on the road. And you know what? If I got to throw 50,000, 100,000, 500,000 into a music video, I'm going to do that as well too. And that music video became a top dollar thing. I mean, you start looking at the money machine behind those pop bands when they were routinely doing like, those all those videos that they were putting out there. They were high dollar videos that they were making to put out there and do it. People started losing because music as itself stopped. Like the boom of music wasn't there anymore, in the sense where when you had subgenres of music like grunge to regular like modern or top 40 rock, like like alt pop or goth or something like that, like you have different things that were there that were subcategories that could also come out into and mix in the pop world. Like, as long as Madonna and Whitney and Mariah and all them and Destiny's Child were putting on videos, you're always going to have that pop market. As long as you can catch a Celine Dion or, Cher, if I could turn back time, doing on a boat. That was another iconic music video. Like, if you can do shit like that, that's my best Cher impersonation. Sorry, guys. So if you can do something like that,
getting clipped.
And doing that in a pop margin, you could still be able to kind of push through a Public Enemy or a Red Hot Chili Peppers or some other band. When it kind of became just like, well, it's all out there. Now we're all able to kind of absorb this, and streaming music became a thing with downloads and little things like that, where now music was like, no one cared about full-length albums. It was about what little one hit can we get out there to do a clip for.
Would you say Napster played a big role?
Definitely, I think definitely that role. When people started getting that download game, it took away this like all right, we're not going to
the incentive.
When there's no day the music died. There's a day that it just sort of it sort of ate itself a little bit. One of the biggest influences that MTV also had, that I'm surprised both of us at this point hasn't mentioned it yet, it could be a whole show unto itself, is the MTV VMAs, the Video Music Awards. So when you take the VMAs, and at the time it was all these kind of videos, and then everybody had the $1 million budgets to throw at videos, there wasn't really like, you started losing what was cool about music videos. You started losing it. So then all of a sudden it's like, it's all kind of generic. We've all seen it. We're doing the TRL live thing. We're starting to get these, the very early 2000s era of socialites, the Paris Hiltons, and all of a sudden it wasn't just rock stars or musicians who were cool, or actors.
Ashley Simpson and her tuna fish or whatever she can figure it out.
You know what I'm saying? It's like it wasn't just that you're cool for being a star. Now all of a sudden, if there was a lot of pop, which was basically, hey, this is a pretty person, and this pretty person might have a 7 on the scale of talent when it comes to singing and stuff like that, but they're good looking enough, and they might be something enough, and people want to hear what they have to say. They're out there doing things. So then if we have interview shows talking to them, which TRL and stuff like that was, if we have these little things like that, or generate controversy toward things, people might want to be more interested in them. So how do you generate controversy or make them more interesting? Put them on shows and have them do dumb things or say dumb things. And have that be the focal point. I mean, this is the era of Girls Gone Wild, for God's sake. Like, you didn't have to be famous to be anything. You could just do
polarizing.
Yeah, exactly.
Even if you look at like at that time, like from like 98 to like 2003, even if you go to WWE, like the Attitude Era, like everything was meant to be extreme, like the show Fear Factor, like everything was meant to be polarizing and like awe-inspiring, even if it was negative.
Yep, I agree, and that's what it is. It's like, famous for being famous rather than for doing something of tangible worth. And when you get to that point, and who are they dating, and that tabloid TV of, oh, now we have, like, let's be honest, and I'm not meaning harping on this, but this was at the time what was popular on MTV, especially in the early 2000s, the TRL generation. It was a lot of boy band and girl groups, and when you have multiple groups of 3 or more people, and person number 4 in the group does a ridiculous thing, and they might not be the good looking one or whatever, but they did something. Now you're going to talk about that person. And now you're going to talk about this one. I mean,
like the JC from NSYNC.
Exactly. I mean, if you look at that show that was like the one you alluded to earlier with Jessica Simpson and Nick
And Nick
Lachey
Lachey,
from
yeah,
98 Degrees. Was Nick even the coolest one from 98 Degrees? Four
no,
guy, bro. Can you name any of the other guys? I think he was a Lachey brother in 98. Like,
yeah,
there's a lot of different, acts. There's so many people that you literally can talk about. If I dedicated 30 minutes to discuss one person from each group, and there's four guys in this one, four girls in that one, five dudes in this one, two people in that. It's like, man, you can go through a few hours worth of programming to talk about these people doing whatever the hell they're doing, and then put people in those situations where it's like, oh, let's try to ram through another sort of thing into MTV and make it palatable for the shorter attention span that was happening at the time. You started making a very microwave culture, very fast food culture, where we just need quick clip bits of things coming at you at that time, and that's going to be what's popular and shown and talked about on the MTVs and stuff.
Yeah, I think like the perfect pivot for them would have been to turn to the live music, because with the music videos, but I think like at that time there probably wasn't enough money in it for them, at least like near term money. But like you look at like NPR, Tiny Desk concerts, like they MTV should have turned into Live Nation, like that should have been like their long term pivot,
Yep.
or they should have turned into iHeartRadio, at the time. But the
Yep.
problem was like by the time it was time for them to pivot towards something like that, they didn't have any money. And like they let the guy Rob Diedrich, like
Mm-hmm.
he controlled the network for over a decade. And what was funny, my dad at the time, he goes, "Yeah, I'm watching MTV." But and I'm like, "You're watching MTV?" He's like, "Yeah, they got this show called Ridiculousness." And like if you were to go to like the cable guide or however you watch your TV, you would see Ridiculousness showing for 30 straight episodes. Like, and there's no break in between. It was all they had, hoping that someone would click on it and just happen to stay because the show was good. But something I want to ask, because you bring this up a lot, in terms of artists in Orlando, artists like Britney Spears, NSYNC, Backstreet Boys. I even believe Limp Bizkit. I could be wrong, but a lot of
Here
those
in Northport,
artists, they got their start in Orlando,
yeah.
and was like the Mickey Mouse Club with like Justin Timberlake,
Mickey Mouse
Britney
Club in
Spears.
the early mid '90s, and then Transcom Records, Lou Pearlman and them started signed Backstreet, and went mimicked them with NSYNC, and then started putting together like a plethora. By the time like I was working with Transcon for a little bit with like they had their levels of artists, like your A tiers, obviously like the Backstreet,
Yeah,
NSYNC, Britney's, yada yada, and then you go down. B tier was like the 98 Degrees and a couple other people on that level, Pink and stuff like that. You start going down, then you start getting my friend, my buddy Mark Terenzi was in the band Natural, one of the bands that were Mike
he's
Johnson.
the one that posted the lucky,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
yeah,
So that's
yeah,
when I was myself and Jason were performing with in Germany and stuff like that in Europe, and Asia and stuff. So we, working with like those guys, like it was a draw that as soon as that open for business sign went on, everybody gravitated to the area, and you had a bunch of these artists here, and everybody was coming. Everybody was trying to be the next whatever the A tier people were, So you had a lot of those C, D tier people out there. So there's a lot of people coming down there, and they were doing the same thing, putting together stuff, making music videos. You see, like every other day, there was a Universal Studios, there's somebody filming a commercial shoot or some sort of video shoot. That's
yeah.
like, who's this? Another Transcon act that's never saw the light of day, or did a little thing, and that's it.
Like, here's what I'm wondering, because it seemed like a lot of those artists that came out of Orlando, it was almost a direct pipeline to MTV at that time. Like, if you were one of those A-tier artists, was that like a pathway to MTV?
It wasn't that it was a direct pathway, but because they had Lou and the people at Transcon were really good at marketing and getting those people out there, the kids out there, doing that same pipeline of saying, all right, you guys are a band, you're doing good. There were a lot of them were doing like these little mall tours and then send them over to
Yeah,
Europe and start playing shows in Europe. Where the joke was, I remember the T-shirts like, you don't know me, but I'm huge in Germany or something like that. Like
yeah,
there's always these things that they made tons of money overseas and were doing it, that way, came back. And then when they crossed that precipice and got the radio play and became that pop band and stuff like that, then it was like, well, how do you market the gimmick? And they all had a very similar gimmick. You all had the tattooed, crazy haired guy. It was my boy Alex from Backstreet and Chris and NSYNC. You had the young, good-looking one. It was JT.
Something
and
for everyone.
It was everybody had the vibe. You had the jokester one. It was Joey and NSYNC. It was like everybody had this gimmick and style that they I was the guy that wore the nail polish, and I'm the sporty one, and I'm the heartthrob young kid. It was like the same gimmick that they were doing. So once they did that, they had to sell the gimmick and let's put you on MTV. Let's make these videos. Let's make it because the girls are going to love it up, eat the stuff up. The young kids loved it, and we're going to make you screaming popular. We have shows that they could debut it on and show. TRL, great. We'll make you a TRL #1 3 weeks in a row. It's like, come on, man. Like,
so
that is ridiculous. But yeah.
So I'm going to give you my most iconic MTV moment, and then I want to hear yours. Okay. If you have, I know they're going to be polar opposite.
Gotcha.
Like for me, the TV show Making the Band. Okay. And Diddy, however you feel about him, you're more than
top
justified.
5 rappers, dialing.
So from that show, right?
Okay.
When he had them walk across the bridge to get some cheesecake, walk across the Brooklyn Bridge from it's like somewhere in Manhattan, like Midtown Manhattan. And for me, that was a huge moment. Like at the time I was in high school, I forget, but him having them make that walk the next day at school. And at that time, there was a few things that were big. It was that show and the Dave Chappelle show with the whole Rick James stuff. I remember the day after those things happened, they were massive. So for me, there's a few MTV moments, but that one always sticks out to where people, they started coming to New York for Junior's cheesecake, because at the time, outside of New York, it really wasn't a thing. It wasn't a thing. And then, fast forward a few years, they have a big location in Times Square because of this show, because of that moment. I'm sure a lot of people in, millennials remember that moment. Is you're going to have them walk across the bridge for some cheesecake. And nothing ever came of the group. That they had a few #1 singles, things like that, but nothing was big. But yeah, I got you. But what was your at least one of your big? I guess we can go through a few. But what was one of your big MTV moments?
And by the way, that Making the Band thing, I believe season 2 was O-Town, another up and coming trying to be that never really matriculated, based out of and I remember obviously the backlash at that time was a lot of regular bands were like, yo, we formed in a garage because we were friends in high school and we've been playing terrible music and sucking in our garage, and all of a sudden started doing more, and then paid to do together. And now you got these young kids going out there just joining a show, and that's why I think there was that's why it's funny, because when you look at a lot of the music at the time, that's why there was such a backlash against the pop bands, because it was manufactured and nobody did the work. It was all you passed an audition and you got there. And then also when you started taking styles of music and you started doing the pop version of it, pop punk, pop emo, pop this, pop that, and you started taking these things, before the Warped Tours and stuff like that, that were kind of a byproduct of it. So I think that's why a lot of bands at that time, gosh, I'm drawing blanks on some of these bands now. That were those pop punk bands at the time.
Blink-182.
Blink, I think, was accepted, but what was that band? Not Plain White Tees. A lot of the bands that are over at Newfound Glory, they started getting really trashed by people oh, you ain't real bands because you're trying to do this. You're taking what was punk and you're doing the pop version of it to make it palatable for these middle America white kids who don't know the culture. And it's they got hated on a lot at that time. that years later, when you go back and listen now, like, yeah, you know what, the Aronson weren't too bad. Like, you go, I think a lot of people had this like visceral reaction at the time to that style of music because of that. And then I think when you look back now, they're like, yeah, they weren't too bad. Maybe we're a little more critical and heavily, overly critical of these people. So, but I would say, like, the thing about MTV in general, even going back, like the moment was the moment, like the moment of what this, and when I discuss like how many things, like, we said, we brushed on the early thing, the impact of the shows like the MTV Raps and the 120 minutes like that. What was it, Liquid Television and the MTV Animation Block? It gave us the Beavis and Buttheads and Spawn and Aeon Flux and all this stuff that you never saw prior to that point. Was like, wow. And that I believe like that Japanimation style, that anime style that came out, was literally kind of like lifeblooded and injected into people our generation, which is why now there's such a huge subculture of it, or not even a subculture, a culture of it that I think is popular in America, because it all started like you can only watch Akira at that point. You can only watch like Cowboy Bebop, and stuff like that off of MTV before it transferred over to like, Cartoon Network. So which is also owned by Viacom at the time. So like it's the same as Nickelodeon, same like that. They're all in the same umbrella.
BET as well.
BET, yeah. So the moment was the moment. Like I'm talking about, you look at like the social activism of MTV, Rock the Vote, all these different things like that they put out there. You look at, mixing the culture, like the rock and jock thing when they had like Dan Cortez doing a bunch like that. You start looking at, like I said, you look at the moments of like, being able to, like, the grunge music revolution, the Seattle boom that really thrived off of MTV music videos as well too. Those iconic VMA Music Awards, the VMAs from like 91 to like 95. I've been lucky enough that I worked for VMAs. I worked in craft services. Recently. I worked production and stuff like that. Oh God, it's been forever, years ago. 2004, I think was the last one I did. You look at the fact that they ran the Super Bowl. I think some people would say, and I open this up to all the sports fans as people at the time, especially since there's such a, with Rock Nation operating the Super Bowl halftime show, and the controversy with Bad Bunny doing, which is ridiculous, but ridiculous that there's a controversy that Americans playing the Super Bowl. That's my take on it. But anyway, when you look at the iconic ones back in that era, when NSYNC and Aerosmith played together with Britney, MTV produced those halftime shows. Obviously, the big controversial one, which was their last one, was the Justin Timberlake and Janet Jackson one. But MTV said, let's make this thing cool and put together these iconic moments at these halftime shows, and they put those things out there. And those iconic shows were produced by MTV at the time. So the moment that MTV took over and said, we're taking music and we're bringing you the best in music for today, and still continuing doing groundbreaking things and making it cool and putting all this stuff out there, that was cool. That was something that was like, you hear me talk a lot about punk music and the ethos, the do-it-yourself attitude. And when you go back to those early gritty MTV days, remote control TV, that fake game show, when you go to like MTV News or Kurt Loder and Tabitha Soren and
Fusion Pop.
You start doing these things and those little intros, and you just see the way they operate. It was almost like, yo, we're this punk style of like, we're getting out there and we're giving you music, because nobody wants to. They were always the subject of controversy with all those little parent groups, and we got to ban this and censor this and ban this. And MTV videos and music artists at the time helped fight censorship at the time and allowed art to be a thing that even nowadays you see it being squashed down in certain mediums, that they allowed art to get out there and be pushed to be a thing. So when you look at the overall music and why MTV was important, there's so many things today that could not have thrived and been what they are or be what they are currently without MTV setting the blueprint. And it lost its way. I would easily say in the mid to late 2000s, it's lost its way, and it's been ridiculous since. But man, that those early days from 1981 when it first went on air to like 2003, 2004, I think that's the era of MTV overall, with everything it gave, from the Buggles, video killed the radio star, to the last video played, I think is the essence of why MTV was great. And that, to me, the whole overall, in our lifetime, it was one of the coolest fucking things to see. And I don't believe that there's anything out there that's like, has been as cool as what that was. Like, that is like the best, I think.
What we do is up there.
Besides, the playlist is taking it over now for the next generation. But yeah.
and for guys, if you want to join the show, no camera needed. Go to @theplaylist100. I posted the link there. It takes you right into the show. It gives you the option. You don't have to have your camera on. You can come on here. If you have any takes or anything you want to play, leave us a comment. But if you leave us a comment, if you can, leave it in the stream so that way I can see it directly. We can get it played for you. But one thing I was wondering, I've been thinking about since the news came out, between MTV, VH1, and BET, between those three networks, they kind of get lumped in together. But I do think there was really small, distinct differences between the three. And like for example, and I wish MTV kind of tapped into all of it. Like with MTV, Max brought it up, pop-up video. They used to come on Friday and Saturday nights. That was like an amazing show. VH1 had, like Behind the Music. Like that was great. And then you look over at BET where they specialized in, rap, hip hop, like R&B. And it seems like MTV was kind of somewhere in the middle. And I do think that kind of made it hard for them to pivot. But I think this is a good time. I know you had a song that you wanted to play. I think this is a good time to introduce some of the music behind MTV, some of the iconic videos, shows, things like that. But before we do, it is time to pay a bill. We can pay a bill for a minute, and then we're going to get into some of the music. And if you guys have a request or let us know in the comments, what were some of your favorite music videos that you saw on MTV, or just your favorite music videos at all? We would love to hear about it. Leave us a comment. Please like, share space or the show, all that stuff.
Thank you for tuning in to the Playlist 100. Join the boys as they discuss all things music, rock, hip-hop, country, metal, R&B, and all things music under the sun. Tired of scrolling Twitter and seeing a constant doomsday post? Head over to the @Playlist100 account where the boys post daily music, videos, questions, and take your requests. Oh, and be on the lookout for Ray's YouTube playlist. Still not enough? Well, head over to the Apple Music and Spotify to hear the songs the boys are listening. Want to join in on the conversation? Join the panel during the live stream or hop on the Twitter Space Show. Have a suggestion? DM us. We want to hear from you. Oh, and be sure to follow @the Playlist 100 for more music adventures.